Like and subscribe right now, or else this will be in your bed tonight. r/AskReddit by Planet Reddit. What's something that people think is normal, but was actually child abuse? As recently as the 1990s, a lot of British primary schools would make kids do pay in their underwear if they forgot their gym kit. As most people remember their kit, this usually singled out those who forgot. I hated this as a kid. One lesson. Another pupil forgot her kit and the teacher made her do it in just her knickers. Because it was summer and she wasn't wearing a vest. It was such a weird day. No one made fun of her because we all were terrified that it could happen to us. That poor girl. I would be enraged if I was her parent. Using the kid's shame as a punishing tool. When I was a kid, I shat myself and I had to go home. Everybody in my class knew about it. Now imagine a parent using that as ammunition. My mother didn't teach me anything about my period. She also made fun of me publicly for getting blood on my underwear. At that time, I didn't know I could track my period. My mom did the same thing. She would scream at me and call me disgusting and dirty when I bled on my sheets. She never once taught me about pads or tampons, and it turns out I had a crazy heavy flow. Ended up using kids pull-ups because it was the only thing that would catch everything. Of course she found out and showed my brother, and both of them called me diaper girl for quite a while. I was and still am told that I'm not worthy of feeling pain or being upset because my parents had it worse than me. I don't talk to them much now. Weaponizing your kids during a divorce. I wet the bed to a relatively older age, maybe about 9. And instead of talking to my pediatrician about it, my parents told me that if I did it again, they would hang my soiled underpants and sheets up outside and embarrass me in front of the whole neighborhood. This, obviously, didn't help my medical issue, and I just learned to hide it from them until I, thankfully, grew out of it on my own. They also threatened to expose my parental abuse and show everyone how I, an elementary age kid, really acted and turn everyone against me. The parental abuse thing was a favorite for my mom especially. My mom used to put my mattress outside for everybody to see. I wet the bed until 13, and I think it's because I had a childhood trauma. My mom loves to talk about how I'm so lucky she didn't kick me out at 17. Yes, mom. Because kicking your minor child out of the house is going to make the neighbors think you're a saint. Screaming at your kid until they're terrified of raised voices. Even slightly raised ones. This. Even as an adult, I tear up if someone talks to me in a firm tone of voice because my parents yelled 24/7 when I was a kid. Same here. It's so embarrassing when my wife accidentally raises her voice in public and I cower/tear up. In primary school, we'd get beaten with a stick if sweat too much during lunch break. What type of shit is that? And now old people are fretting we need to bring back corporal punishment. How about no? Ducker. I remember kids begging the teacher to get a drink of water from the drinking fountain during class. Wait until recess. What kind of ducking sociopath denies a kid water? Edit. Row. There are some current teachers and civilians in here actually defending this. As well as denying children access to the bathroom. Not allowing a small child to get water because you think the 8-year-olds are running some kind of get out of class free scam is shitty. Here's something for your inflated sense of self-worth. Mrs. Karen. That kid isn't paying attention to you if he's so thirsty it actually hurts. When I was in like 7th or 8th grade, my gym teacher wouldn't let these two girls walk like 20 feet to get water from the fountain. It was a scorching hot day. Last class and they had just had to run. He refused them water. Once class was over, one of the girls was close to blacking out due to the exhaustion and lack of water. No one ever mentioned it again, and the gym teacher was still a piece of shit. It still pisses me off to this day. Being told sincerely by your mother there's no money and no food, so you'll have to starve as she smokes her cigarettes and drinks her alcohol. Thank Duck for free school meals. Reminds me of when I was working at a small corner shop in my town. Dad comes in with his kid, barely 8 years old by my reckoning, and asks for £40 worth of alcohol and cigarettes. His kid has wandered off into the shop whilst we're handling this and trundles back with a small half pint of semi-skimmed milk. Asks his dad if he can have it. Really quietly and politely. The dad goes absolutely mental. Shouts that he's not made of money and that the kid has eaten, so what does he want milk for? Then hands over 40 pounds for bunch of chemicals destroying his body and yanks the kid out of the shop with him. A+ parenting there fella. That milk was barely 50p. Yeah. My mom never ever ran out of cigarettes or coffee. 7 kids eating cans of corn or a dozen eggs while she went out for steak dinners. Glad the beach is gone now. My dad used to grab me by the hair when I didn't listen. There was a time or two I was lifted off the ground or dragged up the stairs by my hair. Ouch. My mother got mad at me for some reason. I cannot remember. I may have even deserved it. I was halfway up the stairs with a friend when the argument started when she picked up a rolled up rug. Like a large full room kind. 50 lbs. And hurled it like a missile at me and my friend. We dodged. And she took that as an insult. I used the friend as an excuse to walk them home and just dipped out for the rest of the day until she calmed down. If I did not have a friend around, I would have got an ass beating. Once I did something, I don't remember what. And my mom was furious with me. She was cooking at the time. So she took the spatula, made of steel and soaked in hot oil, and pushed it right under my right eye. I was 7-8 at the time. We are on great terms these days. But I haven't really forgiven her for that. Edit. I am really overwhelmed at the support and sympathy that is being shown to me. Thank you everyone for that. What I didn't mention is that my family has always been on the lighter side of the financially stable spectrum and my parents haven't really been able to cope with that. What this resulted in is my parents constantly falling out with each other and I have ended up having a really traumatic childhood. I have severe PTSD from that and I have a chronic anger management issue as a result. But my parents, especially my mom, has never had professional consultation and it resulted in such erratic and sociopathic, even borderline psychotic, behavior. However, I have thought of posting these issues on r/relationship. Your support have made me convinced about that and I will post there as soon as I have constructed how the proper wordings. Thank you everyone for your support. Parents who pick on their kids and ruin their self-esteem under the guise of tough love. Seriously. But it never stops. My dad still does that to me even though I'm a grown man. Last thing was that he's teasing me with balding jokes to build up my confidence for when people make fun out of me. Nobody ever said something about my balding hair. Is there something like CPS for adults? Lol. Are you part of my in-laws family? They use the exact same excuse. It'll give you tough skin for others. I don't think they realize they are the others. Parents telling you you're never worth anything. And you don't own anything. Not even your own body. Source. I too am Asian. Username checks out. I'm also Asian but live in England. I was always told to never tell anyone about what went on in the house. Probably cause my parents would get arrested for it. Shitty parents. Asia's biggest export for the past 25 years. Source. My family and all their friends. Ignoring a child. As a child I wasn't allowed to speak unless spoken to. I was a latchkey kid from the age of 10. So home alone for hours. I had to do homework, laundry, then cook dinner, set the table, wash dishes after. No one asked me about my day or how I was feeling ever. I just had to follow instructions and sit quietly. I cried myself to sleep every night. So, how was your day and how are you feeling? Well John, the kids are off school this week. We're making banana bread together, doing laundry together, and playing games together. They told me they slept well and feel good. I'm in a good place with good people. Thanks for checking in. Nuns in Catholic schools got away with all sorts of things that were clear abuse. Example. In 2nd grade. There was this one nun who would go through all the lunches of the kids and take out all the things she liked and then hoard them and eat them in front of us. When we told our parents, we got hit by our parents for telling lies about the nuns. What a racket she had. Mothers that are convinced there's something wrong with their children when she's what's wrong. 100% this. I'm finishing my field placements for a master's degree in a mental health field. One of my clients is a 15-year-old girl, youngest of 3, whose mother pulls this shit. The girl is different from her sisters and this concern is brought up to the physicians on staff. It's an integrated healthcare setting. I just want to say to her, lady, your kid is different because you've shot her self-esteem to hell. Let her be quiet and introverted if that's who she wants to be. My mother is convinced something is wrong with my niece because she's introverted. And I'm like, no. That's her personality. There's nothing wrong with her. She dresses differently and that's just ducking fine. Be a decent human and let her be who she is. My stepfather rationed toilet paper. 4 squares a day. Found out this was considered abuse years after it happened. When I was 16 and my brother was 17. My mother dragged us to the kitchen for a family meeting, which was just her screaming at the top of her lungs at our dad because he wanted a divorce. She made him cry. As a teenager, being told you have to sit there while the man you respect most is reduced to tears without being allowed to speak up or do anything. It ducks you up. My dad did that to my mom. We'd also have to write letters to our dad after the divorce apologizing for all the shit he would accuse her of. And then we would be forced to take the letters to our mom and tell her that we wanted to live with him and that she was a shit parent. My mom is one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. My dad is a sociopath. I have so many ducked up stories from the years after their divorce. Shit. I'm sorry. I've had experiences like that with my parents. Divorce apart and I know that it sucks. Plus a lot of the yelling was also directed at me for not making my parents happy, I think. It sucks and I hope you're okay now. Smoking near children. My grandparents would hotbox us because it was too cold to open a window. The fact that I have asthma does not make it better. It might be the reason you have asthma in the first place. Join our community Discord, link in description. Sorry for formatting. On phone. Also TW. It's not easy for me to even tell this, but content warning. This would never happen present day. I live in the South and there is a lot you can get away with under the label of religious freedom. I say this because I grew up in what is essentially a Christian cult. The people in this group believed the devil made your children bad and that you could beat the devil out of them. Who also believed if you didn't make your children pay attention in church they would be evil. To facilitate this, the most of them carried around a hedge branch or something similar. As long as it was long and thin enough to whip your child. If you have ever seen a child down here with stripes or scratches on their arms and legs, this is the reason for it. I still have some scars on my back according to my ex. The ducking people in this church would casually beat their children with these sticks. And at the time the government knew and was trying the bare minimum to stop it. That consisted of telling the parents to stop and that's it. I've had therapy. And since then child abuse laws are beginning to penetrate these cultist communities. They can't do it anymore where I live. But in other places people will still turn a blind eye. Ducking same. Man. Especially the bit about believing I would turn out bad if they didn't beat the devil out of us. My mom told me it wasn't child abuse if we deserved it. And well, I believed her and honestly thought I deserved the beatings. I actually did go unconscious once too. They left me on the floor. Last I heard their preacher died and they're doing better for the laws and surge of young people they got pushing their kids to breed like cattle. Denying your mentally ill kids medicine for their illnesses and simply telling them to pray about it. Not even believing that mental illness exists, even when being a social worker. And also even after your child is diagnosed and has multiple health problems and suicidal ideations, and also telling them to pray about it. Or believing that mental illness of any kind is demonic possession. Unless it makes the child a zombie. I was ruined by Ritalin. Humiliation as a form of punishment. Emotional neglect was entirely normal in my youth. The absolute opposite of helicopter parenting. Where your parents provide food, shelter, and not much else. From the time I hit high school, I was getting myself up in the morning, making breakfast, a couple of pieces of toast, and heading out the door with no lunch, and absolutely no lunch money. Losing focus by the end of the school day. Coming home and getting into whatever food was about, usually a bowl or two of sugary cereal. And most of the time making my own dinner. My grades suffered. But no one really cared enough to want to understand why. And I certainly wasn't raised in such a way that I could talk to anyone about what was going on. My mother's husband, calling him anything else is inaccurate, was emotionally abusive or just off in his own world. My mother was working nights and would wake up for an hour in the evening where my 2 siblings and I would get about 5 minutes of her time. But most of the time, we had to take care of ourselves as best we could. I didn't really understand other people's relationships with their parents. Or their parents' relationships with one another. There was food. It wasn't great, but it was food. And there was shelter. But there wasn't any love. Letting their young child become very overweight obese. I hate that this isn't abuse. I have to call about students who look too thin or seem to not eat enough. They're neglected and failing to thrive. But I've got morbidly obese students and this isn't something I can hotline. No one cares. I feel like I'm failing them because it could be fixed so much more easily at age 5, 6, 7, or even 10. They're almost always doomed to be obese forever though if it's not addressed in elementary school. It's so bad now that average sized children are constantly told or talked about being way too thin or sick looking. Nope. They're healthy. They just look tiny by comparison. It is abuse. Overfeeding your child causing them to gain such substantial weight that it is a risk to their health is abuse. The problem is it is difficult to measure until it gets very bad. My parent jokingly mocking me about my terrible choice of outfits to other parents at school. When it was my parent who made me wear it to begin with. Having a parent take out their frustrations on you when you are in no way involved or responsible. My stepdad used to yell at berate me over tiny shit whenever he was stressed. It made me a really anxious kid growing up and I used to sneak around the house or avoid home altogether just to stay out of his way. I'd panic if people raised their voices and flinched at loud noises. I only realized in my 20s that children shouldn't feel that way in their own homes. My stepdad would also force me to eat food even if I was gagging crying and wouldn't let me leave the dinner table till I ate an allotted amount. Maybe it wouldn't be too bad if it was a toddler refusing to eat vegetables. But I was a chubby 8-year-old who was raised in Indonesia and just couldn't stomach the gravy covered slop they were giving me. Family dinners would turn into a 3-hour ordeal and honestly, I think he only put me through that for his own ego. I'm 25 now and I still have a ducked up relationship with food. I get depressed when I eat and I use starvation as a coping mechanism in times of stress. I don't know if these are abusive per se, but I do know that I don't ever want my own children to share my experiences. Edit. Thank you for the silver. Kind stranger. I don't know if it'd be considered abuse, but we weren't allowed to talk about family business to anyone. We were told to keep it a secret. What's family business to your family? Mostly just when my parents would fight and about what and the drinking on both sides. Or when my dad was out of town and my mom would leave us alone. My cousins and I thought it was totally normal that when my aunt put us in the corner for bad behavior our pants had to be pulled down around our ankles. WTF. Now looking back, she was such an a-hole to us. She didn't have kids. Beating your child just because you felt like it. Treating your son like a prince and your daughter like Cinderella because how else will she learn to be a good wife? Blaming everything on your child. Calling them useless, lazy, ugly, and a failure when you think that they can't hear you, but while you are around them acting all lovey-dovey. Being overbearing to the point where there is no privacy and there is no such thing as them having their own things even if the child paid for it with 100% their own money. Forcing your child to let you use their bank account because your credit is horrible and running their bank balance negative $900, forcing them to close out their IRA when they are 20 to prevent any repercussions. Oh, and my favorite. Not allowing your child to not answer a question so you proceed to break all of their belongings because you didn't get your way. I would also like to thank my parents for teaching me that saying no meant that I would get the shit beaten out of me every time. Nothing bad ever happened because I was scared to death of saying no. Nothing bad ever. After playing outside and getting extremely muddy, my mom forced my sister and I to go outside and clean everything, including our clothes, while we were completely naked. She didn't care who saw us. In school, being told you're not allowed to go to the toilet until the lesson has finished. Or not being allowed to take a drink of water during a lesson on a hot day. Catholic school. My daughter study learner asks me for permission to go to the bathroom. She's 12. Bothers me so much. I'm glad that school is shut now. I hope she finds her freedom soon. It is surprisingly common for kids to not be allowed to go to the bathroom. A girl in my school when we were about 8 turned up one day at school in tears, sporting the world's worst haircut. Like seriously. I've never seen any hair so bad. She looked like Friar Tuck. Apparently she'd been rude to her mum's new boyfriend, and as a punishment her mum had tied the girl's hair in a ponytail and cut the ponytail off with scissors. Definite emotional abuse going on there. My primary school headmaster would regularly punish poorly behaved children by getting them up in front during assembly, a pre-class morning meeting for the entire school, grabbing them by the upper arms, then violently shaking them while shouting in their faces. A fully grown strong man shaking an 8-year-old kid like that is so ducked up that it never really got any remark from anyone present, even other grown-ups. I really hate when I see parents mock their child when they whine and cry. Don't invalidate their feelings. Not sure if this was child abuse per se, but my grandmother and parents used to say, if you don't behave, David is coming to get you. David was my grandma's friend, and for some reason he scared the shit out of me. When he was there he would play along too. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for 3 videos a day.